you. Let me talk to you about inclusive micromobility, please. First, a word about Toyota Tsusho. Toyota Tsusho is a trading company of Toyota Group, a large corporation, 58,000 employees, 70 billion of turnover, busy with trading in a lot of different areas. Also, we are known within the Toyota Group for scouting and for pioneering in new business areas. So we come to micromobility. Of course, the areas of urbanization, aging population, digitalization of transportation make it very, very interesting for us to look into micromobility, and that's exactly why we're here. Of course, Europe, why here in Europe? Because cities in Europe were designed around pedestrians, so micromobility has a strong chance of making a big difference faster than in other areas. During what I call the age of convergence, multimodality, of course, is becoming a reality. Convergence of different industry. Today is not only about automotive OEMs and tier ones, but also about tech companies that are making an acceleration in the way that mobility is transformed. And last but not least, what I call the inclusive micromobility, so the convergence of design. You know all of this. If you're here, and by the way, this is not the latest version of the presentation. If you're here, it means that you already sold on micromobility. So let me just tell you something about what I started to call inclusive micromobility. There's many different definitions. Of course, when we started off, we didn't have the benefit of Aura's definition. Today, we can talk about micromobility, but one thing that I think we should do at this point in time, because it's so large, we should look at what micromobility is doing for people that are not as active as most of the people here. We should ask ourselves, what is micromobility doing for people that are not active? And for the time being, if the god of micromobility looked down at us, he would probably think that we're not doing much. There's a lot of work that we need to do still. There's a problem here. It looks like it's not showing the whole slide, but what I would like to tell you about is the fact that, of course, there's a lot of different issues with micromobility today. There's safety issues, there's regulations, compliance is not clear, but one of the things that is perhaps less advanced than the other areas is the fact today micromobility is used by active people. So we would like to see if there's a way to make micromobility more inclusive. Many years ago, we started looking at different groups, and it turns out that if you think you're getting old, the good news is that you're not alone anymore. Especially in Europe, I would say. The OECD estimates that about 1/4 of the population is actually reduced mobility. What we mean by reduced mobility means that we cannot walk more than 500 meters. So that's why what I started to call inclusive micromobility, which is between the areas of medical micromobility and active micromobility, is something that we really need to look at. And today there's a lot of opportunities for that. And it starts off with design, it starts off with the fact that the cities are becoming more accessible. And of course, it starts off with the fact that we gather a long experience. These are the 4 companies that I worked for in my long career as a micromobility or urban freedom advocate. So Segway, then we went to Jenny Mobility, and then this wheelchair that you can see here, and then Estrema Bureau. So whether it was for disabled people or for stand-up people or for tourists or police, what really matters is something that a 50-year-old artist told me about Segway. Many years ago, he told me, when I ride my Segway, I'm 50 years old, but I feel like I was 11 years old. Owning the city, roaming, wind in the face, facing the sun, owning the city, feeling finally free, active, smarter. That sounds familiar, I'm sure, to a lot of you. Think about the first time you've heard about or you tried the magic of electric assistance. Think about the magic of being able to just decide your path and go to work through the city. The slides are going around, and there's many stories I could tell you on how many different technologies that have to do with inclusive micromobility have transformed the life of people, the relationship between people. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. We're trying to also talk to those people and try to give them products that can help them. taking advantage of urban freedom. This is also blocked, I think. Maybe there was a video. Let me, for example, maybe you can remove the music, that's okay. But here, for example, what this self-balancing wheelchair allows people to do is to move and use their hands at the same time. That's really something that's unique to a paraplegic person. That is something that was not possible before the advent of this. This is another example of what we call inclusive micromobility. This was presented by Toyota Motor Corporation during the month of June. So if you look at the one in the center, you can see a form factor, which is a stand-up, statically very stable, very low platform, so it can be used, it can be stepped on by elderly people. You don't have to be an athlete to do that. Of course, it's low speed, and it's fitted with the sensors that will allow the machine to basically detect and slow down and eventually stop in case of obstacles. So it's designed to be used in highly densely populated areas and to be accessible and usable by people who are not very active. So what is inclusive micromobility? How do we define it? So it has to be safe, it has to be accessible, it has to be intuitive, and very important, it has to be indistinguishable from other forms of micromobility. Design is integration. So we have to design vehicles that are not looking like meant for people with reduced mobility. Here's an example of what we have done with a very important company called Indigo, a parking company. We have made this wheelchair that you see here, which is a company we have invested in, Wheel, made in Japan. This wheelchair available in a mobility as a service environment. So today you can access this platform. You have active mobility, so you have bicycle, e-bicycle, mopeds, but we also have what we call inclusive micromobility. So right now we make these units available in 2 parking lots in Toulouse, in the south of France. And we're trying to make that sense of freedom and that sense of participation to the city life more accessible and possible to take advantage of by people who thought they lost this type of ability many, many years ago. So how does it work? You get to the parking, you leave the car, you go on a wheel, and then you go and have your ice cream in the city center. You take advantage of the city, and you come back. This is all about cooperation. So what we're trying to do now is to take this model of inclusive micromobility in mass and bring it in other places. So if you're a city, if you're a company, if you have a platform, feel free to grab us after this talk so that we can talk how we can make urban freedom more inclusive. Thank you very much.